5 real poltergeists and ghosts that will terrify. Poltergeists and ghosts are quite sinister. One minute you have a quiet, ordinary home, and in the next, you have utter chaos in your hands. The stories on this list are some of the most eerie poltergeist and ghost manifestations you'll come across. These are 5 real poltergeists and ghosts that will terrify. Number 5. Seaford Poltergeist. It was 1958 in Seaford, Long Island, and inside the home of the Herrmann family, everything seemed normal until the afternoon of February 3rd. Mrs. Lucille Herrman, a registered nurse, was at home preparing dinner, but when the children, 13-year-old Lucille and 12-year-old James Jr., entered the kitchen, out of nowhere, various bottles started popping their caps. No one saw the bottles pop or move, but they heard the popping of the caps and later saw the liquids that had spilled out. Shocked at what happened, the family did a survey of the home and they found a bleach bottle in the utility room, bottles of shampoo, medication in the bathroom, holy water in the master bedroom, and even a bottle of liquid starch in the kitchen, all open. More baffling is that even bottles that had a screw-type cap also had their tops popped off. 2 days later, when the children came home from school, another half-dozen bottles in their homes suddenly popped their lids. This included a bottle of nail polish, bleach, alcohol, starch, detergent, and a bottle of holy water again. James Herrmann Sr. was curious and frightened that this was happening in his home. He thought maybe his clever son, James Jr., was pulling a prank by adding carbonated capsules on the bottles, causing them to pop. So James Sr. then secretly tried to keep a close eye on his son. Determined to catch him in the act, he surprised him one day while he was in the bathroom, but as soon as he did, he just found the young boy brushing his teeth, and moments later, several bottles popped off and the shelves began rocking back and forth. Despite this, James Sr. still tried to look for tripwires or any contraption that might have caused everything, but still couldn't find anything at all. Unsure of what to do, he called police. At first, they thought he was pulling a prank call, but eventually decided to send a patrolman into the home because of his fine reputation. It wasn't long before the officer noticed the activity of popping bottles in the house himself. He wrote his report and another detective was assigned to the case to do a thorough investigation. Detective Joseph Tozzi began his vigil on February 11th, and by night he had witnessed a bottle of perfume pop open and overturn in a room with no one inside. The next few days the same disturbance occurred, but he soon noticed it centered on the bottle of holy water. On February 15th, James Sr. heard the familiar sound of a bottle and rushed to the room only to find the bottle of holy water on the floor. When he picked it up, the bottle felt warm. Later that day, the family was in the living room when a porcelain figure levitated from the coffee table and flew into the air. It moved inches before falling to the rug. This was the last straw for the family, and they decided to call in Father William McLeod for help. The house was blessed, but paupers, as the ghosts came to be called, activities continued. But soon the popping bottles weren't enough for this poltergeist. It then became more active and violent, and one time even toppled an entire bookcase. When the family tried staying out of the home for the night, Detective Tozzi stayed at the house, but no incident occurred. But when the family returned, a sugar bowl flew from the table and smashed into pieces. Researchers from the parapsychology department at Duke University later got involved with the case. The group believed someone in the family had a capacity for psychokinesis, or PK for short. Even though they believed someone in the family had a strong capacity for this, they cleared them all, especially James Jr., of faking any of the events. Dr. Pratt and another researcher began staying with the family to do further research. For some time in March, the poltergeists were quiet before violently showing up again on March 2nd. The round of activity went on until March 10th when Dr. Pratt and his colleague heard a loud popping sound in the cellar. They went downstairs to find a bleach bottle had popped its lid. Strangely, that was the last time the poltergeist ever appeared. From February to March 10th, there were over 67 disturbances in that home. It was inspected by detectives, electricians, plumbers, firemen, building inspectors, and more, but no one could find any answers. The family doesn't know what happened and why the activity suddenly ceased, but they were grateful they could finally move forward from the ordeal and go back to living their normal lives. Number 4. Summerwind Mansion. Also known as the Lamont Mansion, the Summerwind Mansion in West Bay Lake in Vilas County, Wisconsin, was first built in the early 20th century as a fishing lodge. It was purchased in 1916 by Robert P. Lamont and then remodeled to become a summer mansion for his family. It was a grand place surrounded by nature and beauty. The Lamonts lived in the home for 15 years, and during that time, many of the maids reported that the home was haunted. Mr. Lamont didn't believe any of that talk until he himself and his wife witnessed an actual apparition. As the story goes, he and his wife were eating dessert in the kitchen when the basement door started to shake. It then opened and revealed a figure of a man standing before them. Lamont took one look at him and immediately fired 2 shots from his pistol, but the bullets merely passed right through him. Soon after that, the family left the residence. In the 1970s, a young family moved into the house, Arnold Hinshaw and his wife Ginger, together with their 6 children. Since the day they moved in, the family reported strange experiences in and around the home. They heard mumbling voices and saw strange shadow shapes and figures looming around the hallways. At first, they thought it was a coincidence, but soon appliances would break down and mysteriously fix themselves without cause. Closed windows would suddenly open. Contractors hired to work on the home complained of missing tools or were sometimes too spooked to even work there. The family resorted to doing the renovations in the home themselves. One time when painting a closet, they found a small hole that led to a small cavern. Arnold snuck into the area and flashed a light, but was shocked because he thought there was a human body inside. Then the children came home and the eldest child volunteered to look again to make sure. They thought it might have been a bear of some sort caught in the home during construction, but when their daughter came out, she told them there was a skeleton that had black hair and she could make out an arm and a leg. The family wasn't sure what was back there, so eventually they just resealed the hole and left the possible body in the same spot. As the family lived there, they also began experiencing apparitions, including a ghost of a woman that they dubbed Matilda, who floated to and from the French doors found in the living room. The family also started experiencing problems. Arnold became increasingly frenetic with his organ playing, oftentimes playing in the middle of the night because he said the voices in his head demanded it. In the end, he suffered a nervous breakdown. Shortly after that, Ginger attempted suicide. The couple eventually moved from the home, divorced, and went their separate ways. Summerwind became abandoned again and was said to have been struck down by lightning and burned to the ground. Today, only the brick chimney, fireplace, and staircase are all that remain of the property. Number 3. The Colosimo Family. In Spotsylvania County, Virginia, the Colosimo family moved into their new and modern home, and at first they didn't see or experience anything unusual. But something happened in October of 1986 that would change their lives forever. Sheila Jean and Richard Colosimo were in their house talking with their friend, Mrs. Chewing. Their 11-year-old daughters were also nearby playing outside. While taking a tour, Mrs. Chewing commented that their daughter's old bedroom was extra cold. The couple admitted that that room did have a chilly draft and that even after trying several times to get rid of it, they couldn't, so they just moved their daughter out of there instead. Mrs. Chewing asked for a rosary and began walking around the room repeating the phrase, "Leave this room." After doing this for a while, suddenly they noticed the temperature beginning to rise. The women then left the rosary hanging on the wall and they headed to the kitchen for coffee. A short while later, the girls came running into their mothers, telling them something big and red scared them as they saw it staring from the window. The women headed back to the room to check, but they found the door locked from the inside. After forcing it open, they found the room icy cold once again. Even more chilling was the rosary they hung on the wall was now embedded on the opposite side. After this incident, things took a turn for the worse for the family. The two women then spoke to a priest from St. Mary's Church and explained the situation. When they left, the priest gave them holy water to sprinkle around the room. The Colosimos used this holy water, but the mysterious happenings continued. They would hear unusual banging from the room at all hours of the day and night. Every time they would hear the racket and go to investigate, they would find the room locked. Once they got inside, the entire space would be in complete disarray. Some of the manifestations included having books flying off the bookshelves. At least one door came flying from the hinges twice, and the pins flew out so strong they were driven into the opposite side wall. Eerily, they also found handprints without any fingerprints smudged into the walls. Desperate now, the family got in touch with another priest and also contacted a psychic. When they visited the home, the psychic said the spirit was of a young Confederate soldier. She described him as being 16 to 17 years old with blonde hair, still in uniform, and was wounded. She explained that the spirit was confused and thought the war was still happening, and he got more agitated when the rosary was placed and Mrs. Chewing ordered him to leave. The psychic soothed the young ghost and asked him to move into the light. After this incident, the home became quieter, and the Colosimos stopped experiencing unusual phenomenon altogether and continued living there without further incident. Number 2. Rosenheim Poltergeist. Around 1967 and into 1968, the office of lawyer Sigmund Adam from Bavaria, Germany became the center of an unusual poltergeist phenomenon. Without anyone being inside, the lights would turn themselves on and off. At times, they would swing violently from the ceiling, and the phone would ring in strange patterns and very often. Various appliances would turn on or off on their own, and occurrences like the copier fluid mysteriously spilling out without anyone using it became common. The case was tracked, and even the phone calls were monitored, and in 1 week at least 600 calls were made to the office. When the lines were cut, the calls continued with almost 46 rings every 15 minutes. The furniture and paintings also mysteriously swapped with one another. By October of that year, the light bulbs one day blew up simultaneously. When Germany's electricity board and company couldn't figure out what was happening and couldn't find any fault in the system, paranormal investigators stepped in and tried to figure out what was going on. Head parapsychologist Hans Bender soon noticed many of the unusual phenomenon centered around the young, recently employed secretary, 19-year-old Anne-Marie Schneider. When Bender questioned her, they found out she suffered trauma from a personal relationship recently, and she also suffered from an undisclosed neurosis. They noticed whenever Schneider would enter the room, the lights would immediately flicker on and off. At one point, the activity increased with calendar pages flying off the walls. The most telling was when a large 400-pound cabinet slid from one side of the room to another without damaging any of the linoleum flooring. The company sent Anne-Marie on vacation, and as soon as she left, the activity settled down. When it picked up again after she returned, she was let go from the company. Anne-Marie left the office in January of 1968, and all of the poltergeist phenomenon faded. Little is known about what happened to her after leaving. The last anyone heard, she had married in 1969. It's unclear what happened during this phenomenon or even if it was real or a hoax. However, the case was so unusual and strange, many believe it was real. It was well known in the area and heavily documented, yet despite that, no one could pinpoint the main cause to the mysterious happenings. Number 1. McKenzie Poltergeist. One of the most violent poltergeist activity in this compilation, the McKenzie Poltergeist at Greyfriars in Edinburgh, Scotland, is truly terrifying, with over 500 recorded attacks since 1998. George McKenzie is known as the Bloody McKenzie because of his role in enforcing King Charles II's one religion during his ascension to the throne in the 17th century. The king ordered Covenanters to stop having the freedom to worship the religion of their choice. He appointed George McKenzie to round up the rebel Presbyterians and force them to accept the new religion. As a result, of course, a war erupted between the two groups on June 22, 1679. This was a bloody and violent battle that saw the Covenanters defeated badly. Many were arrested and sent to the Greyfriars Kirkyard to be imprisoned. While being held, it was Mackenzie who made their lives miserable, torturing the prisoners with brutal force. He executed those who did not recant. Many died from starvation and exposure, and the bodies were buried at the Greyfriars graveyard. McKenzie was so ruthless that he's directly responsible for over 18,000 deaths in total. Curiously, when he himself died, he was also buried in the Greyfriars. He, of course, had the grandest mausoleum in the area, which was dubbed as the Black Mausoleum. Then one night in 1998, a homeless man looking for a place to keep himself warm wandered into the Black Mausoleum. He tried to open the coffins, thinking he could get warm inside, but fell into an old burial pit of plague victims below. A grounds guard was alerted of his presence, and the homeless man ran away into the woods. But since this incident, the unusual poltergeist activity in the area began. One woman who heard of what happened was curious and came to see the tomb herself. She stood by the steps and was sent flying into the air by some unknown force. Then another woman was found unconscious close to the tomb with markings and bruises on her body and around her neck. Paranormal investigators and other curiosity seekers who visited the area were also subjected to various tortures. Photos online of people with markings on their bodies, including scratches, broken bones, and bruises on the neck and abdomen area, have been recorded. Some women felt paralyzed after feeling something tugging their hair downwards. Since the rise of the reports, an exorcist, Colin Grant, visited Greyfriars and attempted to exorcise the spirits in the area in 2000. But in the middle of the exorcism, he stopped and immediately left the area because he got scared for his life. He later stated he had never seen so many tormented souls and spirits in just one spot. What made it more eerie was that just 1 month later, Grant actually died of an inexplicable heart attack. Today, the Greyfriars Kirkyard is still considered a scary and dangerous place to be in, yet it still attracts many curious people. So there were 5 real poltergeists and ghosts that will terrify. Poltergeists and ghosts are unpredictable. You can't see them, but when they make their presence known, sometimes you just have to brace yourself for the nightmare that may be coming your way. If you like this video, then please remember to subscribe to our channel because we have new videos coming out every Wednesday and Saturday we know you'll want to check out. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.